Good afternoon, Scott. We've worked together at Vodafone many, many years, and then
Yeah.
you became one of my success stories from a coaching perspective as well. And I was just saying, I love how we still check in with one another. Let's start with a colleague had turned to you for support,
Yeah.
and you were talking about how you feel it's important to reach out to a professional and get some support. For a man to say that is huge.
You've helped me to get to where I am. Without this process, I know for me personally, this has changed how I approach my day to day, whether it's personal or business now. I was struggling with my own my own personal circumstance. What is it me? Is it work? Is it what is it?
Hmm.
What it does is it gives you the ability in a safe space where you can go and unload. And one of the tricks that I think you can manage to do is to allow us to subconsciously unload some of the stuff that we hold on to without even thinking. And when you start to really think about what is it that I do and why,
Hmm.
you unload a load of stuff, right? But at the same time, and I think the reality is, you mentioned it before, men don't talk. You're absolutely right. I think one thing with this process is it allows you to have a conversation around everything in your life. So not just you, your family, your
Yeah.
friends, your circumstance, and it allows you to put that into perspective. I wasn't happy in my job. I wasn't. I've been really honest with my manager and said, look, I don't think this is for me.
Yeah.
And then actually because of this, I then started to look and pursue a different avenue for my own well-being. How do you deliver excellent work if you're unhappy? You can't do it.
You're opening up and being vulnerable. It makes such a difference because people will relate to what you're sharing. And I think it's so important for you to know the impact that you're making by being open and honest and sharing it with people. It will make a difference. People you are influencing, people that will be watching this and you will never ever meet. But if it can help one person to say, it is okay to reach out for help. And you're right. If you're not happy in your job, your output's not going to be brilliant, to say the least.
What's the worst that can happen? If you go and
Mm.
speak to somebody, right, and you tell them something and they don't do anything with that, they just listen, what have you lost? You managed to relinquish it from yourself. Actually, you may have said, well, you know what? They haven't judged me. They haven't got an opinion on it. And actually, yeah, I feel better for it.
In your career, there's been times where you haven't been happy in the role, like you said earlier, and your values weren't aligned to your purpose, that the role
Yeah.
wasn't aligned. When you were in that situation, what was the impact on you? How did that feel? How did that kind of show up on a day-to-day basis for you?
Well, my engagement was zero. I wasn't interested. I'd go on to calls and be blank. Like, just literally, I was like, hate's a strong word. I would be unwilling to participate. Is a case of what's the point? I think one thing I became apparent was I'm a doer, right? And I can't do a role which is quite passive. I just can't do that. So my day to day was I was low. It was transferring to being at home as well, working from home at the time, going through the process of not engaging with anybody, not having a sounding board, with friends. We were in COVID at the time as well, so it was challenging. You couldn't just go out and do what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
But actually, in times where you needed to be more upbeat, it was just compounding the issue over and over and over again. To the point where I'm like, it's just shit. And it was like,
Yeah.
well, that's it. It was very much a case of, well, I've got to do something, and that's where you start looking on the job board, start talking to people, start trying to find out if there is any opportunity elsewhere. And again, I've done this now 3 times since that first started. So, it's tough because we all have lows, right? And I'm a firm believer in there's always somebody who's worse off. And I try to use that every single day.
You've changed roles when you've wanted to progress in your career. What made you take action?
The first one was I was really down and I hated my role. And I spoke to my manager, and my manager at the time was great. I spoke with them, explained the situation, said, look, I'm at a crossroads, I'm not happy. And they offered their support and said, look, we'll support you to do whatever you need to do. There was a job on the board. I applied for the role. I got the job, which was great. Going back to almost an old comfort zone to a certain degree, because I knew a lot of the old people who were there. I'm doing everything I can within role. I was quite happy, but I just needed more money. personal circumstances. So I just reached out. I spoke to a couple of people who I was working with on certain projects. Said, look, is there any opportunity within your area? And they said, look, we need to fill a void with sales. And this was going into the go-to-market space. And they opened up a role. I interviewed for it. Spoke to multiple people, went through it. I got the job, which was great. Worked with a really good team at the time as well. But again, the first project I had was massive. It was huge. Did it on my own. Loads of really good feedback, great plaudits and whatever. Yeah. And then they moved me onto a project which was around cybersecurity, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. Again, started conversations with others within the business and said, look, this is what I'm looking for. And that's when the role in commercial came up, and had the interview, and the rest is history, so to say. I mean, that's 18 months ago now. I'm really happy in where we're at the minute. It's a good challenging role. We've got a really good team, strong dynamic. We challenge one another, but at the same time, we have the right amount of fun.
A key strength you have is your influencing skills. And I don't know if you are aware of influencing, how influential you are. And by that, I mean, you started to network. So you were unhappy in your role. You've told us, you've explained to us how that was showing up. It was making you miserable in and out of work. So started to tell people, first of all, you spoke to your manager and see, is there any opportunity for this to change? And the response was, no, there isn't. And you're like, right, okay, I get it. But I'm going to start looking, I'm taking that control back for me, and I'm going to start looking for a new position. And I think control is so important in your life. If you feel out of control, then it's overwhelming, and it's about getting that control back. So you took control, but I love your influencing skills, because you started to network, you started to tell people that you were looking for a new opportunity. You said that you did that on 2 occasions and got the roles that you were looking for. Influencing in the workplace is such a game changer. If you're really strong in that, and I cover that in my coaching courses, in my coaching packages, there's a separate one for influencing and then a separate one for persuasion, because they are 2 key skills you need in the workplace. By you taking those steps, I truly believe you've made that path to your success smoother, because you've allowed people to get to know you.
As a manager, you need to make sure that you're doing what's right by your people.
Personal development has evolved, and it's become even more important in today's world. You used to be able to say to your manager, you used to be able to sit down in your annual review and they go, yeah, you've done a great job. You didn't have to go in with all the detail and show the results. I mean, I'm talking about 15, 20 years ago. You can't just do that nowadays.
You're doing, which has helped me to open my mind to be able to be that confident to ask. At work, I have a mentor. This year, I went on to a mentoring program where it's put me with somebody I don't know. And the question came around, what do you want to get from this? And actually, now I'm at a point where I'm like, well, actually, I just need some skills. So I need to understand, how do you build a P&L? What goes into bid management? How do I prepare myself to move from in this small space that I'm in now into a medium space, a larger enterprise? And I know that through this mentoring program, I can get those skills.
To stand out in the workplace, you need to be showing that you are worth that investment. So if somebody's sitting in front of a manager and said, I have a mentor and I've asked them to help me with this, and this skill, and this is what I've been working on, who's the manager going to remember? They're going to remember that person, aren't they?
I think as well is I'm very present now as well, where I'll, on my one-to-one that I have weekly, I'm quite happy to say to my boss, what are you not getting from me? Am I giving you what you expect? And some of the feedback over the past couple of months was, well, actually, we know you're the hardest worker in our team. To have that feedback from your manager shows that your own personal brand is flying. And if you take pride in what you do, I'm 100% about you'll get back what you put in.
Purpose is the most important element of all of this. If you don't know your why, then how do you get out of bed in the morning? You can't, can you? Because you've got nothing to get up for, have you? No. And people underestimate the power of purpose.
The bit that resonated the most with me was, what do I actually want to achieve? What is my purpose and what is my why? Who are the people who I'm doing this for, etc. And you take it for granted. You really do take it for granted. And that's where the initial steps with you really, really help.
you mentioned about your brand as well, and that goes hand in hand with the influencing. I think you're consistent with your brand. So you consistently show up. There's never been a time I've reached out to you and said, "Do you want to catch up, or can we do this?" You've always gone, "Yeah," been dead open. Not many people nowadays do things like that because they're busy, but you make time for people. And I think when you look at your brand, if people to ask to say about how would you describe Scott, it's, you get great feedback because you're always there for people. You will always help people out. Do you think people in the corporate world, I think especially, there's that fear of failing?
Yeah, yes, 100%. But the reality is it depends how you deem a failure. They're all lessons. It's not a failure; it's a lesson. And actually, you can challenge your working group and your peers to say, "Listen, I'm not confident that I'm going to do this first time. Do you have anything that can aid me to get to where I need to be?" You've got to understand as well what's within your control, because in the corporate world, we're all trying to get by. You know your own limits, so don't try and overdo what you can.
I get that a lot from clients, and I'm like, no, you haven't got the syndrome.
Mm.
You're new to role. You need to have that opportunity to learn the ropes. It's the key.
Yeah,
Ask.
yeah,
Don't
100%.
be afraid. But there's that fear. And what happens, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I know when I first started on my own personal development journey, before I even thought of coaching, the reason I went out to America was because I was struggling with life, in and out of work. I could walk into the office one day and I'd feel dead confident and I'd have a great day. I could walk in the office the next day and somebody would just have to say the wrong thing, or I'd feel that they'd had a reaction, and that'd be my whole day wiped out, and I'd be
Mm.
filled with self-doubt. I'd procrastinate and I wouldn't get anything done, and it was relentless. And I'd come home, I'd spiral, I'd overanalyze, and then I'd be exhausted, and then I'd go to bed. And so I went out to America for my own personal development. Then I remember a few people in Vodafone got wind of things. I'd started to changed my approach, and people started to hear about me going out to America, and then they were coming and asking me for tips, and then the coaching journey began. But before I learned that, I'd shy away. I just did not want to be seen, because when you're feeling like rubbish and you feel like everybody else has got a grip on things, it's dead hard to say I'm struggling.
I struggle some days, but actually, it only takes for me to say to somebody, "How are you doing?" and see the smile on their face that somebody actually cares. That changes me. It
Yeah,
100% changes my day, because
yeah,
at the end of the day, people buy people. I'll tell you that to my grave. People buy people, and it costs nothing to be nice to people. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? It doesn't. And the thing is, you could be on the lowest of the low, but if somebody says, "How are you doing?" and come on, talk to me, just walking up the stairs, whatever, it can change your whole day. So, like you mentioned before, you can go inward. You can also just mirror it, flip
yeah.
it on its head, just
And
by
that's the
somebody being
crazy
kind.
thing. It can be
Yeah,
switched so
yeah,
quickly and simply, but sometimes when you're feeling the way you are and you're feeling lost, you're not quite you're not quite sure which way to go.
mm,
So, but you're right. Then just a kind word can then just flip it for you, and you go, okay, somebody's seen me, somebody's engaged with me,
yeah,
somebody's heard me, and you're right. We're all human. We're all struggling. I think people forget. Somebody shared with me a situation they had at work last week, and they were talking to a senior manager, and from their perspective, the senior manager was really off with this person, and it really upset the person that was, having the conversation with the senior manager. And I said, that is about them, not you. We are all struggling on whatever level we're on. And I think it helps me sometimes to remember that people don't do things to you intentionally. They
no,
just, we're just all thinking about what's going on for us. We aren't really thinking about you, because I've got that much shit going on here. I've got this to do, that to do, and this to do, and that to do. I'm not
mm,
really thinking of the impact I'm having on you. So, and I think sometimes when people are a bit off, I kind of say, well, I can't control that. That's for
And
them.
also, they may just be having a bad day, like you say. So actually, don't take it personal. You know, they may not want to talk about it, but you
Yeah.
know, that's where the day after or the day after that, when you see them, say, "Hey, Pete, are you all right?" So, yeah, yeah, why? You just seemed a bit off on Monday, and then that's when the conversation comes as, "Oh, you know what, mate? Yeah, my workload was just crazy. You know," and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you start the conversation. I think that's where my third person comes in, because if I am feeling down, I am feeling low, and I'm not doing, I can turn around to myself and say, well, actually, if this was somebody else, what would I say? And then you almost put it into practice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because we all procrastinate, we all put things off and whatever, yeah, but it's for how
Yeah.
long,
Somebody said
Kerry
to
will
me
tell you
once,
about
"You
like,
shouldn't be like that. You're a coach." Yes, I am a coach. Of
yeah,
course, I got a presentation to pull together, and what was I doing yesterday morning? I was cleaning the slats on my
there you are.
blinds. And why was I doing that? Because I was procrastinating, because I
Yeah,
felt overwhelmed and I didn't know where to start. But
yeah,
luckily, I put down the sponge and the towel and was like, "You are proper trying to avoid
yeah,
something here. Get in front of that PowerPoint and let's go and have a look." But
yeah.
so yeah, I 100% procrastinate. It is, sometimes we have to process stuff, and that's why we do it. So if you could give a career advice with everything that you've learned over the last 5 years, what would you say to somebody that's unhappy in their role? What advice would you give them?
If you're not changing it, you're choosing it. So you're choosing to be unhappy. And you've got to roll the dice. What's the worst that can happen? So you either tell your manager that it's shit and you don't like it and see if there's any other opportunity for them to change something, or you go and find somebody like you. It may be another individual. You may go to your doctor, and say, look, I'm feeling an all-time low. I'm trying to do this and the other, but actually I just need a safe space. Um, if I'm honest, the number one support mechanism you have is your manager, right, at work. If it's a corporate problem, it's your manager. If it's a home problem, it's your partner or your family, right?
Hmm.
And then if you make it clear and nothing happens, you're on your own. But I am a firm believer that if you tell somebody, as I've done, prime example, people help each other. We're human beings, it's the nature of the beast. But if you don't roll a dice, you'll never know. And it's as simple
Love
as
that.
go and speak to somebody. If this was your best friend coming to you saying, my work is terrible, this, I hate it. Have you spoke to your manager? No. Well, they can't change it. If you're unhappy in your marriage or whatever, have you spoke to your partner? No. Well, how can they change? How can they help? If you don't communicate, you don't talk about it, you don't do something, it's never going to change. So again, if you're not changing it, you're choosing it.
Yeah. I'm going to have to nick that one. You're not changing it, you're choosing it. I like that. That is brilliant. It's great advice. You're right. First call is to speak to your manager. If you're not getting the response from your manager, then what would you say?
Taking the law into your own hands. You've got to do something. Leave. Do you know what I mean? Well, if you think, and I have children, so I look at it. If your children are in a place where they're not happy, what would you do? You'd move them, right? And you put them somewhere else where they're happy. It's
Mm.
exactly the same for you. You've got to just change. And it may take a bit of time and you have to ride it out. But if you tell your people around you to support you, who are supporting you, and they don't do anything, and you take matters into your own hands, it is what it is. I was fortunate. I had people who listened, or they were just sick of me talking, one or two. But the reality is we've got to where we are now. I'm happy in where I'm at. I'll be due a change soon enough. But I'm confident that the people I have around me and the mindset that I've been able to work through because of
Mm.
moments like these, I'll get to wherever I want to be, regardless of what I do.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Scott.
No worries.
Really appreciate your time. And I know that somebody will be watching this now and hopefully they'll leave us some comments, tips that you've given. But thank you so much.